Eric, we're live.
I know. Are you ready? Are you guys ready for this? I've been waiting all week. I was so excited. I went and got a haircut today. I shaved so that I could look my best for tonight because I've been so looking forward to this day. My name is Eric Crouch. I'm the 2020 National Life Group LifeChanger of the Year. And tonight I have the absolute pleasure of being the moderator for our chat. Tonight we're going to be discussing technology. And if you're new, we want to let you know about a couple of things. First things first, we're going to be muting all the participants except those who are in the panel. And if you want to use the chat feature to ask or drop in questions, we'll try to get to those by the end of the chat. If we don't, they may become the subject of a future topic. But what I want to do now is introduce you to these incredible panelists. And I thought, what better way to do it than to do it in a very teachery way? Let's go alphabetical order. David, I'd love for you to introduce yourself, then Diane, then Micah.
My name is David Morales, and I am the 2016 New Mexico Teacher of the Year, the 2017 NEA New Mexico Award for Teaching Excellence recipient, and I'm currently the Enlace teacher at Mayfield High School, which stands for Engaging Latino Communities for Education. And I teach with our virtual learning academy, and I love what I do.
And I just want to be David when I grow up.
Oh, man. Wow.
Well, I'm Diane Smokorowski. Everybody calls me Smoke. It's just a whole lot easier to remember. I am the 2013 Kansas Teacher of the Year and the 2019 National Teacher Hall of Fame inductee. I am currently starting my 23rd year in education. And the role I am is the coordinator of digital literacy in the Wichita Public Schools, but I really just am a middle school language arts teacher by heart who just loves to nerd out with other teachers.
And hi everyone, I'm Micah Brown. I'm currently a technology and innovation lead teacher for the Andover Public Schools in Kansas. I come from little people world, so I taught first and second grade, and those little people have my heart, and I love serving their teachers so that they can serve them better.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it. Well, let's jump right in. And 2020 has certainly showed us how critical technology is in education. And I just started thinking about it the other day, and it almost feels like prom, right? Like either you had a date, you had some software, you had someone you were going with, you had something you felt comfortable with, or maybe you knew how to dance and you were like, I'll just get out there, I got this, or you didn't. And for those of us that didn't but went anyway, it was like, oh man, this is weird. And I feel like we've all been thrown into a line dance, and here we are. And you're like, they're saying to the left, to the left, to the left, but you don't feel like your body's quite going the way everybody else's body's going. And I wonder if that's how some of our teachers are feeling right now. And I wonder if it's that kind of discomfort that you feel when you're out there and it feels like all the eyes are on you and you know kind of what you're supposed to do, but it just doesn't feel the same. And so as we get started tonight, I would love to talk about how we get started. Like when I think of starting, I think of a clear starting line. What routines, what kind of things can students, teachers, caregivers lean on as they start this school year and establish new norms and routines? And David, I would love to hear what you have. If you would start, I would love to hear from you.
Well, thank you so much, Eric. And thank you all for having me here, because I mean, this is pretty exciting stuff. I think you're right. For me, I keep telling everybody, it's everybody's first year of teaching all over again. And if you remember what that was like, because I remember what that was like, it was like I was swimming, man, dog paddling, trying to make it. So, you know, one of the first things I learned was that if I established, you know, routines, procedures, things like that in my classroom, I could manage things a little bit easier for me, which made it better for them so that my kiddos could learn and we could get to the good stuff without having to deal with all that side noise. So, you know, one of the things that I've really worked on this year is, you know, how do I welcome my kids into my meetings, right? When we're doing our direct instruction and I'm talking with my kids, what are some of the things that I want to make sure I bring to the table? So I always have music playing. I always have something on the screen. I've already started sharing the screen before I let any kids in, and it has an image, it has a meme, it has something that kind of draw their attention, and it has a nice little beat to it. So to the left, to the left, to the left, like you were talking about. Okay, that's not really my speed. My wife gets mad because I don't ever do any of those line dance things. But, you know, I start playing some Queen at 10 in the morning when they walk in, and we are the champions. And all right, one kid actually told me, "Man, it's a little early for Queen," and I said, "Blasphemy! What is wrong with you?" So
that's right. Over on the East Coast, it's too late. You
yeah,
started too late.
Yeah, exactly. So establishing how they're gonna come into that meeting, how they're gonna come into that space, and then checking in and saying, all right, with your notifications, with the little icons under participations, give me a thumbs up, a thumbs down, a yes or a no. Let me know how you're feeling today. That way I don't mess with you too much if you're not feeling it, because hey, I get it. Some of my kids are literally, I don't ask my kids to have their cameras on all the time. I do constant check-ins, so they have to react and let me know they're there. But they'll kind of roll up out of their, and you can see that they just got up because they're doing this still. So to make it a space that they're willing to do that for, to come in, they know what to expect, because over the last, we've been doing this for 3.5 weeks now. We start the same way. We have the same kind of agenda, even though each time it's a little bit different. And I always make time for discussion between us, whether it be breakout rooms. I ask them a question. Today, the controversial question today was, do aliens exist? And they were like, it was crazy. And I teach high school kids, nah, that's a bunch of hooey, and yes. And it's crazy that that's the kind of stuff that really gets them going. And then that interaction creates a breeding ground for building community. Mm-hmm. So for me, it's really important to kind of set up a scaffolding system for them, so they know what to expect. They know that when they get there, it's not going to be me just talking to them. I'll explain what we have to do in our assignments and all of that stuff, but then they're going to have time to interact. And in that, I feel like I've been really lucky and have a lot of kids show up. There's still kids that miss, and I try not to make that about me. I try to make it about, how can I support them and how can I help them? So for me, establishing those norms is a big deal. And once we get to that, we're able to flow through the content a lot better. Thank you.
Mike, I'd love to hear about what you're doing with the littles. Sure. You mentioned earlier that you're in Littles land, and that's where I live. I live there too. So cool. Tips, please. We would love to know. What are you doing?
Yeah, I'm going to kind of piggyback off of David a little bit. It sounds like to me, David, like building that flow and that scaffold is really important. Same thing in little people world. I mean, it is 2020 and it feels like our first year of teaching. And so my biggest advice is, start simple. There are so many cool tech things out there, but ladies and gentlemen, we cannot do it all. You see all kinds of cool, and I'm not dogging anybody who's doing Bitmoji classrooms right now, but that seems to be the hot thing. Fantastic if that is the right fit for you. But I'm seeing teachers who are like, I don't know how to do that. I don't have time to do that. You have to go back and start simple and then repeat that with your kids. Be consistent. Take time to build their digital fluency. Like it's a common misconception that our kids are native, to digital tools. That's not true. Give yourself the gift of time to get good at one thing. And so that's my biggest advice, is to get good at one thing. There are so many tools out there. Don't make it about the tools. What are you having kids do with the tools? So in Little People World, we love open-ended tools where they can create, where they can reflect. But think about it. They can do all those things, but in one space. And so we truly love open-ended tools where kids can be creative and reflect, but I don't have to learn a million different tools to do it. So going back to what David was saying with the flow, that scaffolding is so important for kids. I'm a big visual person. One of my favorite things to do with kiddos is to make what I call task cards. And so if you know that the green plus button is to take a picture and you want kids to take a picture, take time to pre-teach the icon. Have it printed on a little card. Like your first job, babies, you're going to go take a picture of your workspace so that you can show mom and dad when you get home. Green button, picture of the desk. Done. Then they can voice over it and talk about their space to mom and dad. But they only had to learn that one tool. So do not feel the pressure as an educator to try and do it all. We shouldn't do it all anyway, but especially in the realm of technology. Think about the task over the tool.
Yeah. And I think a lot of us get guilty looking over our shoulder or looking maybe on social media and seeing somebody doing something really cool, and you know, that may be the one thing they picked like 3 years ago, and they've been hustling that thing for 3 years, and you're looking at that going, I got to be there, and that's a weight that I think a lot of people carry unnecessarily on their own shoulders, because that's what we do as teachers. We try to take that burden off of other people and put it on ourselves and try to carry it, and sometimes that's just not necessary. Diane, anything you want to add to that? I mean, I think you always find some unique ways to add in opportunities to make the room fun.
You know, I am a huge fan of improv games, improv shows. So if you remember Whose Line Is It Anyway, I think I have seen every episode probably around 10 times. And I still go and watch it on YouTube whenever I can. Those elements of trying to build the play, the purposeful play, is what builds that community. So one of my favorite things, if you remember the game on the show is Props, where they pull out a bunch of stuff and they say, hey, you know, here's all these things. What are other things you can make out of it? And it may just be something really random, like a piece of foam, or it might be something with kind of squiggly elements, you know, just because they're all just like movie prop things, right? Mm-hmm. And what we do is, even in these virtual call spaces, is how can I play games like that? You've seen a lot of children and teachers last spring where they went and did those home scavenger hunts. And they would say, all right, kids, go find a decorative pillow. And they'd run back and hold up that decorative pillow. I'm going to take it to the next level, and we're going to build a little community out of it. So whatever they have nearby, it could be a pen. And I can say, it's not a pen. Micah, what is it if it's not a pen?
It is a hairbrush.
It is a hairbrush. David, it's not a pen. What is it?
It's a mustache.
It's a mustache. Eric, it's not a pen. What is it?
It's obviously a flute.
Oh,
there you go.
I see that.
Oh.
I love it.
Our students, they all have something hopefully nearby that they can grab very quickly, and we all do it together. We're all playing the flute, and we're all being a little silly, but that purposeful play builds that community, as well as give the students that fear of missing out if they don't come. I think there's that piece of it, is like, there's going to be some magic in this room, and I better show up because I'm going to miss out if I don't get there.
And I think that's the big thing. David, you mentioned having music playing, and I've had this itch. I don't know if you watched wrestling in the 90s, but they had walk-up songs.
Oh yeah.
And I, like, the other day, I was so close to getting a fog machine and just letting it rip, and then coming into like dun 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 dun, and then be like, now entering the room. And then start calling out names, you know what I mean? And just making it fun. And then letting that be the surprise that they wake up to, and not knowing what it's going to be that morning. So some people argue, and I don't necessarily agree, but I have heard this, that sometimes technology can make you more distant. And I want to believe there's more. I want to believe there's more ways to connect. I was never a big 4-wall guy. I always thought you should have at least 3 windows on those walls. And one of them was just so you could have your back to, so you didn't feel like someone was looking over your shoulder. But I feel like the window is there for us to look out into the world, and for the world to come into our classroom and see what we're doing. And I would love to hear from you guys about how you're building those classroom relationships outside of that, but also how you're connecting to other people and bringing the world to the classroom now that we have maybe some different opportunities, because we can't go places like field trips and do different things that we were used to doing. So how is this stretching you or growing you as an educator? What are some cool things that you think might be beneficial? Feel free. Maybe David, you want to hop in on this one?
Sure. So going back to what Micah said, I'm a big believer in starting slow to go fast. So building that resiliency with the tech tools is important, and we're going to use that to be able to have meetings with people in our community. So we have a local osteopathic medicine college, and those medical students are actually going to come visit us in our Zoom meetings, in our meetings, and talk to our kids and talk to them about, hey, so this is the struggle that I had. And all of those doctors that are coming to visit are people of color that reflect the population of the kids that I teach. So we're building relationships not only with this higher learning institution, but these kids are able to see themselves reflected in the people that are coming in and having these discussions and talking about some pretty heavy duty subjects, but it can be fun too. It can be this space where we can enjoy. And I think a lot of I know for a little while there, I was so worried about making sure everybody was there and all of that, that I forgot to be me and have a good time and do some great stuff. I'm going to share something that I do with my kids real quick. I have this background and I'm in the middle of a meeting and I'll change it and they lose it. They absolutely lose it. And it's those little things I think that bring back the joy, you know what I mean, of what we do. Because I like messing around with the kids. I like talking to them and they're energetic and we talk a lot of stuff and all that. But what it does for me is it lets me be me, lets me teach from who I am. And then I can bring that into the classroom, which allows them to be them. And when they feel like if I can be silly, like Diane said, then they can. And if they can, there's this little bond of trust that starts to build. And like you said, I don't know what that guy's going to do next time, man. Hey, you should have been there, man. Ese vato, I don't know about him, man. Ese vato, I don't know. He's kind of crazy. But it builds that, relationship, that trust. Now, on the flip side, I know I'll go a little bit quicker, but I've been able to communicate on a deeper level with some of my students, the kids that didn't want to speak up in class. Through message, through text, I've been able to kind of, all right, I get the issue you're dealing with. They're able to share in that space in a way they couldn't before. And I think that's been wonderful. So there you go.
Yeah, we've been back about 3 weeks too. And I've noticed a very similar thing where sometimes kids we'll have some asynchronous and then some synchronous stuff where sometimes I send them off like, hey, this is you've got this. And when you knock these out, you come on back, you got questions, come on back, I'm right here. And the number of kids that come back 10, 15 minutes early that are done with their work and they're just like, oh, I just figured I'd wait here with you.
Yeah.
And you're like, this kid could go be playing video games. They could go be getting a snack. They could be doing all kinds of things. And they are in the rooms with their teachers. And it's not just me, it's the teachers down the hall. They're all saying the same things. These kids are coming back because they want to be with each other. And I love that you mentioned earlier about just creating some time for each other. I would love to hear from the rest of you guys. Feel free to hop in. What are we doing to kind of expose them and bring those opportunities in, but also thinking about connecting with our peers and maybe other teachers and how we can do collaborative projects with other classrooms that maybe we didn't think we could normally do because, we had these walls that were around us. And maybe now that the walls are gone and people are in different buildings, it makes that transition of working with the class in Pennsylvania or working with maybe there's something there that we could explore more. I'd love to hear from Diane or Micah on that too. So,
well, there's something that's interesting that has occurred when we have shifted to this remote experience. And I know that some schools are doing this face-to-face while broadcasting and teaching at the same time. And that's no one's had training on that. That was not something anybody went to college to figure out how to run best practices. That is a whole different element than we haven't experienced before. But what did come out of the spring that I think was a breath of fresh air is that we, for the first time, had time. We now have not the bell-to-bell experience. We could have to reflect on things. And as a classroom teacher, I'm middle school language arts, I'm teaching writing, and I had to look at my schedule for units to build in reflection time, which is one of the most critical pieces, that metacognition and learning. But often it was, okay, I've got to get to the next unit. I've got to get to the next unit. But when our children went home, now they can pause, reflect, ponder, reconsider, and look where they have grown as people. And Micah, say it with me. We have to know our children as people and
as learners.
there it is. I knew she'd come up with it. There it is.
I was going to say, she was on the hook there for that one. I don't know.
He knows it. We say it all the time.
Yeah. I was like, whoop, I'm getting out of that one. I'm just kidding.
But yeah.
Micah, tell us about what have you seen from like professional learning? Are people jumping into different things? I feel like they are. I feel like people are looking for ways to find solutions, and they're just really looking to see what people are doing and what works. Because a lot of things right now, you're seeing people try things. They're throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks and what doesn't, and then they're going. And y'all talked about starting small. So where do you go to find out where to start?
Absolutely. Well, that's where your PLN comes into, stereo. It's not by yourself. You talked earlier, Eric, about like busting down those walls. I've always been one of those teachers that I bust down the walls. I want to find those things that hook my kids and the people that hook my kids. I'm not always the expert on stage. I call that the Moby effect. Sometimes my kids need to hear from other people. They should always hear from other people. I think the experience in the spring and the experience we're going through now has almost made it feel, we've always talked to kids, feeling is okay. Well, we've had to feel that too. And that permission, did it stick to the wall? Nope. Okay, I'm going to try again. That didn't stick to the wall. Mrs. Smoke, what stuck to the wall for you? And then we're working together. And I've seen the teachers that I'm working with, we have not started with students yet. That starts next week. We've had some time together though, and I have not seen, I've seen community before, but we have pulled together. And my motto has always been, these aren't just my kids, these are our kids, but now I'm seeing it in action. These are not just my students, this is our students, our community. Nope. And not just with teachers and admins and things, with our parents. The intentionality with parent engagement and how we engage them, not just through technology, but just in general with learning, has really shifted. And our state has been going through something called redesign with 4 different principles. And one of them is family engagement. But this experience we're having to go through has just kind of shot everything out of the water. One of the things you're talking about, knocking down walls, we haven't been able to have our meet your teacher night. Okay. So we've had a couple different options, and one is, virtual meet your teacher night. And so you have, the virtual classrooms, we've had Zoom sessions, but one of the ones that I really like, and you may have gotten a little taste of this or heard of this before, but our porch visits. We had meet your teacher porch visits. And so they were given the option to, hey, you can Zoom with me. You can't come in person, but you can Zoom with me. Or, hey, would you like to meet me in your driveway? I'd love to just tell you about who I am and how excited I am to be in your child's life this year. And that's something that, we thought was cute before. That little people always went on porch visits and things like, no, that is a great way to involve your parents and your caregivers and things like that. So I've seen walls being busted down, not just with delivering content, but in the way we think and do things, which is really exciting. And I can't bust down those walls without technology. I'm tapping into Twitter. I'm tapping into, emailing my peers. I have to have that technology to stay connected, but it is not my only pathway.
So that leads me to kind of the balance question, which is, now I think we're going to see more people using technology for longer periods. So where does the balance come in, and how do we make sure that people don't have tech fatigue? What are the other things we're doing to keep not only ourselves, but our students and the caretakers who are responsible for being on the other side of the screen, or helping students on the other side of the screen, ensure that they're getting kind of that whole child learning experience? What are we doing, or what are you guys doing to help balance that burnout? Because I know that we can get real heavy on the tech and then not realize what's draining us so much is just being on a screen all the time. And so how are we filling our lives the other ways? Diane, want to jump in?
So one of the things that I've been promoting pretty heavily is, how do you help students use the resources that they have that are, and Eric, you and I talk about this too, the low pixel or no pixel experience that still provides a great learning opportunity. And though we might be on these Zoom calls pretty regularly, how do you help students create away from that space? So even if you have 5 Legos, if the students have 5 Legos, and I've heard of a lot of schools that are sending home just 5 Legos. But with that, having the students use this as a way to represent symbolism. And maybe it's kind of like, David, if you could think of, you know, an animal that represents your personality, what animal would you choose, David?
Rhinoceros.
A rhinoceros. So imagine I'm one of the second graders that Mrs. Brown plays around with. And I've got 5 Legos. I'm gonna have to try to figure out to make a visual representation of that rhinoceros just with 5 Legos. And so I might start putting things together. And friends, it has really nothing to do with the idea of, do you know how to build a thing that looks like a rhinoceros? It doesn't. The idea is, how can you take visual elements and make it represent into something? So this may be look more like a duck, but I can tell you that's a rhinoceros. And I can defend that all day long to say, well, this is his horn. So you take the opportunity of, where can students unplug or use things in creative ways and still provide that same experience. One of my favorite things that I saw our friend Jed Derryberry did is that he, instead of having PowerPoint slides, he grabbed a stack of papers and colored them. And you may have heard of paper slide videos. It was similar to that, except he did his call out in the front of his yard and then held up these sheets of paper, and those were his visual aids while he was still talking. No one was sitting in a chair. There was none of these backgrounds. He was outside in his front porch broadcasting on location. How can we help students think about on-location experiences right in their home? Or how do we create experiences in the classroom where the students are there that require them to step away from the computer? They might still need to capture the photograph of what they've created so that it is published and we can discuss it. But I think you can do so much with just a camera app on a phone, a set of colored pencils, paper, and Legos.
Well, that just goes back to those open-ended opportunities. And you know, sometimes teachers are feeling that pressure of like, maybe they're feeling, I have to take all my curriculum and I have to make it digital. Ladies and gentlemen, we have to utilize technology in a way that supports deeper learning. Just because you make a worksheet digital doesn't make it any more engaging. Yeah. Like, I'm hearing echoed from everyone, it's about relationships and taking those breaks. And I think as educators, we need to start calling out what we're doing with technology and not having technology be the end all be all. I'm not gonna lie, not all screen time is bad. I recently read a post where it talks about calling out what you are having kids do. It's important to start verbalizing that. Are we using technology to reflect? Well, it's not screen time, it's reflection time. Are you exploring? Call it exploration time. It's a great gut check as an educator to truly weigh what I'm having kiddos do digitally, making sure that it's meaningful. It's not just a digital worksheet. It's, you know, taking a picture of that rhino and voicing over and defending that.
And I think it's different when you guys talk about it, you're talking about producing things. And I think the concern with screen time was mostly consuming. It's like when I was 8 and I got my first TV and it had the little knobs and the little wires on the thing, and you had to bend them like this and put aluminum foil on there so that you could get like 3 channels. My mom was like, you better not stay up because you'll go blind watching that TV. Yeah. And that was kind of the like, oh crap. Like and then at like 18, I had to get glasses. I was like, oh my God, I'm going blind. Turns out I couldn't see the whole time. I was just squinting, and that's why I had really bad headaches. But it wasn't from the TV. It was just a genetic thing. But it was one of those things that was very real for a lot of people that grew up with that era, was that you watch too much TV, it'll make you go blind or rot your brain. It'll do this. And I feel like the difference is the opportunity we have to create. David, you were talking about some really creative stuff earlier. I'd love to hear from you.
Well, I mean, I think it's really important to recognize that the technology isn't the outcome. Right. It is the tool. You know, I happen to work with our Virtual Learning Academy, and our director made a great point. You know, he's talking about, we just, expanded like 20-fold. It was this room 10 years ago that there was 5 of us around the table working on, distance learning. And now it's everybody. But we have to remember that, first of all, the tech and the computer isn't the teacher. the human being behind it is. And when we make human connections, whether virtually or in person, that's what creates those moments of true learning for us. And how do, you know, for me, it's right now we're working on a piece on culture. And we're, you know, my kids get caught up on culture being, you know, ethnicity, race, you know, food, fun, and fiestas. Well, you know, it's so much more than that. So I have them, you know, hey, you're going to take this information, you're going to go talk to somebody that you trust in your family that you think will give you real answers. And they have this discussion. And then they have the reflection time, like Diane was talking about. And then they bring it back and now we talk about it. So now it's not just, you know, I'm writing this on a piece of paper just to get points for it, but now it's, I'm learning about myself. They're learning some great critical thinking skills, some great analytical thinking skills. They're learning how to write because I tell them, hey, you got to learn how to write. And then they bring it back and they tell me a story, because you can tell me all the data in the world. That's not going to engage me. But you tell me a story about how my grandfather met my grandmother by walking past her and dropping notes on the ground because they weren't allowed to talk to each other because he was Indian and she was Spanish. Now I'm like leaning in. And when you see the kids do that on the screen, oh, you know, that I think is where you're seeing that building the relationships and building those experiences. You know, by the way, Diane, that was the dopest rhinoceros I've ever seen. It is, I want you to mail it to me, please. But the reality is, you know, being able to create those experiences for the kids doesn't have to be just digital. They can take that, what they've learned, apply it in the real world and bring it back and share it in the virtual world and really create some great connections.
And when we talk about connecting kids and the learning, we obviously can't let that slip through without talking about how do we find the things that make them tick. Well,
Yeah.
Diane, you kind of hinted a little bit ago about the play, and David too, and Micah, you all kind of talked briefly about how you're helping them to become themselves and to kind of relax and feel out this space. Let's maybe play that. Let's talk through that a little bit more. I would love to hear about, because I'm sure there are a lot of people who are thinking, okay, we did this game, we did this thing, and they may be just doing things and they're not really intentionally looking for those moments where they see something that's really important to a kid, or and whether that, David, whether that's just a subtle comment about music, right? And that may reveal a lot. It's how do you spot those things? And then when you do, how do you find the opportunities to get the kids pulled into them and run with it?
No.
So I think you have to start, and I read a post the other day, there's a Twitter thread going on lessons teachers have learned in this new environment of teaching. And folks are just putting notes of, I've learned that I should be doing this, or here's a tip and trick. But one of them mentioned the idea of having a spreadsheet so that when the students show up in the call and maybe baby brother is walking by and he says, you know, I need chocolate milk, or one of those things, that the teachers kind of capture, like, ooh, chocolate milk's a big thing at this house, right? Or you start, the idea is, again, as Mike and I kind of tried to say before, you have to know children as people and as learners. When you open up those opportunities to challenge them with things like, can you do a photo essay around seasons? Or can you do, take 3 photographs that represent math in your neighborhood? Whatever it is that you're having students do, of just very short question of the day, the alien conversation that David spoke of. Keep track of those little nuances. I'm guessing, David, that in that class today, you found some student who's really passionate about sci-fi. Is that true?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And you may have not known that before the conversation, but you're like, oh, yeah, I'm going to have to bring out some more Roswell conversations.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So,
I'm going to have to get David on the call with me later. We had the same conversation. We were talking about the layers of the earth, and somehow we got onto the asteroid before the election. And from there, it went straight to, Mr. Crouch, do you know anybody that's ever been through a black hole? And I was like, no, I don't. And I when you said that, I was thinking, do we teach the same kids? Like, we might have the same kids in our class. It's interesting though, because it got really curious really quick. And you know what? I just pressed the mute button and I just
boom, 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 boom,
let them go. And
Yeah.
they did. It was an interesting conversation nonetheless.
And I want to address, William is in the audience. And first of all, you want a hippopotamus. I'm going to work on that.
I saw that. How do we get them to turn our cameras on or turn their cameras on, Smoke?
Well, I'm going to also include you in this one, Mr. Crouch. I really do think that if you can start the year with those playful moments of being silly, those engaging conversations, asking students to, you also have to set it up to be safe. If you do not feel safe in this moment, I understand.
Yep.
But I hope that we can make this so exciting eventually. And I'm not going to ignore you. I purposely have spent money, which is, teachers do that, but I purposely spent my own money so I would have 3 screens going on at all times. So I have one screen for any visuals, I have one screen for a browser, and I have one screen to watch all those little beautiful faces or their squares so I can see everything going on at the same time. And I'll call them out and I'll say, Micah, I'm thinking about doing a writing activity, and I would like to know what is your favorite drink at if we went to a Sonic or one of those things. Micah, what's your answer?
Diet cherry limeade, by the way.
Wow.
Yes, and then I'm going to capture that, and then I'm going to find a way tomorrow to bring out cherry limeades and bring that in. So I don't want to take all of the air, but I'm going to pass this one over to Micah. What would you do?
I always go back to the motto, you have to make it joyful, you have to make it relevant, you have to make it irresistible. You have to open that door understanding that they're going to have to enter themselves. I cannot force you to turn on your camera, but can I make it a little bit more interesting so you might want to? Absolutely. Like, we are actors and actresses, folks. Like, we have to know our kids as learners and as people first, right? Because once I know someone as a person, I feel like I can connect with them more. And then when they ask me to do the learning stuff, I'm going to rise to that occasion, because I know Mrs. Smoke, knows I like cherry limeades now. She took interest in me. I'm gonna rise to that occasion. So that you can't force kids to turn on your camera, but by goodness, you can open that door wide and encourage that for sure. I still encourage, even if you are fully remote, get into having some learner profiles, not just that spreadsheet, but like really start tapping in and taking note of how kids respond. You don't need to give them a million choices in the world. In Little People world, we call it scaffolded choice, structured voice and choice. You can write me a song, or you can draw me a picture, or you can, write a paragraph, or you can write me a comic. Start taking note of what choices they make and having those opportunities and those choices. So you have a standard or a goal you want them to meet. Why not give them the choice of how they want to show or demonstrate their understanding? When I feel invested in and my voice is heard, then I'm going to rise.
Yep.
Maybe turn on the camera.
I just have my kids at the end of every session. I ask them, hey, if you're comfortable, if you feel like it, turn on your camera. I'm going to take our class picture for today. And half of the kids that have them off, turn them on. And I go, so we do one of our final exams for the year is we make a movie based on our year in review for our class and all the stuff we do in and out of it. So I go, you better start taking pictures now. So that's what I'm doing. And they're like, and I go, all right, every time my face changes, it's a picture. So I'll go 3, 2, 1, and it's crazy. So, I mean, just asking them. Hey.
It's funny you say that, because I'm the lead photography teacher at our school, and we teach, it's an elementary school. So when I say lead photography teacher, that's really a badge that I just kind of made up for myself, because we don't really have like a photography class, but we do have quite a few cameras. And one of the things that we were so proud of last year was that our kids made the entire yearbook. Same thing high school seniors do and high school students do, but they made our entire yearbook. And so funny enough, we were messing with some kids the other day. We're like, hey, when can we mail you this camera? We need you to start taking pictures on Zoom. And they were like, what? Like, I don't know, but if we're going to have a yearbook this year, we got to do something. So get creative with your angles. And they just started laughing. But they also started thinking, because they came back with more ideas. And I was like, oh, okay. We just kind of teased that out there. But you know, they want that sense of normalcy. They want to feel that. And I think most of them do. And obviously I think the backgrounds, the virtual backgrounds have their place, especially when we're talking about kids who may not want their background to be seen, or maybe have a lot of stuff going on in the background. I know some of the kids have, one of my students is in a daycare. And so there's a lot of kids, and sometimes she has a very difficult time speaking over the volume that's just in the room. And she's very aware of it. And so she doesn't want to jump in and use her voice. And she will, almost out of respect for us, cut the screen off if she knows that a lot's going on. And I was just like, wow, how blessed am I to have a fifth grader that's that aware of what's going on, and not just I was just like, I don't want to be a distraction, so I'll turn mine off, and then she'll pop back on early, or, you know, or hang out after a message and just be like, hey, I didn't want to interrupt, but I wanted to ask a question about this. And you're just like, wow. You know, I don't know that I would have been as responsible as a student at her age in fifth grade. And I'm so impressed. I'm so impressed with some of the things that I see from kids. I was going to ask earlier about so we talked about passions and interests and finding things. One of the things that we know that they're interested in is, Diane, you spoke about some of the games. How are we making, and this is kind of a personal question, how are we making this more like a production studio? I know Diane and I have talked about this, but it almost feels like class has segments now. If you think of like the Jimmy Fallon show, or like maybe the Bobby Bones show or radio show, and it has you have these neat opportunities to kind of like hit a button and play a song and have a segue or a transition that may be different. Have you guys thought anything about what the digital classroom looks like and how you're changing up spaces, so that if you are teaching, let's say you're teaching reading and then you're switching to math, how does that feel for the kids? Where's the transition at? So I'd love to hear any thoughts.
Well, first off, there's your hippopotamus.
Yes.
It's a little wider. It just needs a little tail, so you have to imagine that part.
Well, we won't judge. We won't judge her weight.
I only have my 5 pieces of Lego. You know, this is something that's really been resonating, that I've been kind of chewing on for a while, as we have teachers that are starting to switch their ideas, especially if they're the remote learning teachers, because we have both. We have face-to-face, we have remote teachers in our district. And I was visiting with them and I said, are you coming in every day? And they said, yes, even remote teachers come into the school every day. And I said, friend, you have the best production studio right here. You can have a corner that may look, because we always decorate bulletin boards and things, but they're just up there to be cute. Well, that's not always true, but there's a lot of that that's cute, right? What if we made those sets? So you have a under the sea sort of section for reading, and you've got kind of a science lab that you would show up with maybe a lab coat, and you've got some goggles going. You maybe have some really cool wigs that are bright green and yellow or something. Can you go on location in different parts of your room? The only thing that would be different is that you need to make sure that your laptop is sitting on a cart so you can move it with you. Make another special spot on the floor and see if that could be something to kind of help, you know, use that idea of a production spot. Or you could make a session of your time together of, all right, there's going to be a show what you know kind of a thing, and today's show what you know is all about using your socks for, you know, so let's pull a sock out and we're going to do sock puppets. We used to do those, remember those? So we can do that and see what you can come up with. You can even have students design their own background on paper and then use that as a backdrop, so kids can come on location from the Wild West, from the beach, from New Mexico, and you know, we come from Mars if we wanted to. So start thinking about how are you becoming that producer.
I appreciate how you say like the space and things like that. And as I said, and it almost reminds me, I saw on social media a while back, who was the first successful remote teacher? Mr. Rogers. You
Yeah.
felt that environment. Kids were anchored in that house, and we went out to locations and had guest speakers and things like that. And so I kind of just made that connection, you know, production and but those different spaces can really anchor kids, especially if you're remote. This is my classroom. This is my spot. When I see that special, you know, prop, I know it's time for this. Or I see that, I feel safe. It creates that, you know, we talk about how the classroom, the environment's a third teacher. There's an opportunity to do it.
You know, one of the things that I tried this week, which was really interesting, was, you know, I don't know, like if you ever watch the TV, there's always ads, right? And so one of the things that I challenged my kids to do was get on the Google Docs and sign up for an ad. And they could pitch something that they were doing and they could sponsor the section that we were learning in, right? And so one of my, I know it's crazy, but we were talking about things like getting kids to turn the camera on and getting kids excited. And one of the kids, he just loves to tell jokes, but this one was really funny because he got his grandpa to come on and tell the joke. And so it was Major's jokes, and Major was just so excited. And so he had made like a little piece of paper, and then he did like a little jingle. And then he was like, in today's math lesson is brought to you by Major's Jokes, the funniest jokes in all Columbus, Georgia. And then it went to a joke, and then he went back to the thing. And then that was kind of our transition into the next thing. And I'm telling you, you could tell he spent a considerable amount of time thinking around what he wanted it to look and feel like. And I think there's a lot of value in that. And I'm wondering, you know, going from something like that to making, like, just being remote, even if you're remote from the water fountain. I mean, who's seen the water fountain in 8 months? Nobody has. Are we drinking out of this thing? What are we doing when we get back? Let's have a discussion. We're live from the water fountain. Water fountain, how do you feel? No comment. Okay, well, that's interesting. A little sketchy. Maybe we'll just back off here, live from the water fountain. You guys let us know how you feel in the comments. And then, but you're right, Diane, that is the kind of playfulness that maybe we have to think around, that because those ephemeral moments are gone. Like, we don't have those little pass you by. Here's a funny thing, Mr. Crouch tripped in the hall. It's not there. So we have to try to create it. And so that kind of leads us to our kind of our last question for the night, which is, you know, the world is changing so much. It's changed just in the last half a school year. If you think about last school year, none of this was on our radar at all. And so as we think about the world today, and we think about, and I know it's hard because we're some of y'all are you just opening up this year, but thinking about next year and what possibilities will come if, let's say, we are back to normal. What good changes are we going to see? What predictions do you have for the landscape? How do you think learning will be better because of this? Because I think it will be. I think it will be better.
Absolutely.
David, you go first on this one.
Oh, well, thank you. I think we've all been stretched, right? We've been forced to grow in ways we never thought we could or would, or maybe be in places in our careers where we're, you know, I got my stuff down. I know what I'm going to do. I'm pretty good. And then this comes and, oh, all right. But like you said, now I love the idea of ads. So I don't transition from like English to math within my class, but since I do have that scaffold, that routine, I can see where I might be able to build in some stuff like that, or some music changes to go from one place to another. So those, I think, are the kind of things that I could bring into the classroom and do like this little hybrid deal where they do stuff on the computer, but then we're doing stuff live, and we're creating this space where it's energetic, it's exciting. And I think that's something that maybe has been missing, the ability to kind of take a step back and, all right, they're people first. Mm-hmm. They're people first, like you guys said, and I love that. And being able to have fun. So I talk a lot of smack to my kids, and they know that off the bat. And I tell them, it's all right, let's go. They're high school kids, so we go back and forth. I love being able to do that, and then be able to create the space virtually that we can use, because that's what they're going to use when they leave me. They're going to, if they go to a higher learning, or the military, mm-hmm. or a vocational or technical school, they're going to be using these tools. So by giving them the opportunity to work with them, play with them, learn them, I feel like they have a foot you know, they're a step ahead of the other of other kids or of other people that might not have had that opportunity. So I think we're stretching, we're growing, we're gonna do things really differently.
I think you're going to see students take something like this, and instead of using it as a consumer tool, using it as a place to send text messages, that it becomes a creation tool.
Yeah.
I think this year we're going to see more kids look around them and consider, you know what, I may not have a lot of resources in my home, but how can I use what I have in a new and creative way?
Yep.
Could I take flour from the kitchen, a handful of that, put it in a pan if I'm a second grader, and practice writing my spelling words? You're just going to see divergent thinking, which is what we've been trying to do with those in ed tech for so long. I think you're going to see it finally snap and people go, yes, I see where that can happen. And I think you're going to see that with teachers as well. When people get new tech, they have to play with it. They have to figure out how to do silly photos of themselves. They have to figure out just what can it do. And sometimes we start with things like digital worksheets because that's where we're playing.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're going to see that shift.
Yeah.
And I think you're going to see better education for all after this is over. Micah, what say you?
I agree from both sides, especially with the idea, David, that we are truly lifelong learners, and in embracing that change and letting kids see us through that productive struggle. And then, you know, Mrs. Smoke, with the idea that kids can be true creators, and then that kind of converging and meeting with teachers being like, I don't have a whole lot of control right now. Can I embrace that and let kids step up to the plate and be those true innovators? Or am I going to try and stay rigid when I don't have control anyway? So I'm really looking forward to seeing teachers embrace the, not trying to sound negative, that loss of control, and embrace it and turning it into, you know, stepping alongside their kids to be learners right along with them. Let them drive their learning.
And I think one of the things that stretched me was when my kids left, we were so used to seeing each other. We had 8-9 months together. So being virtual, we already had that piece.
Yeah.
And this semester, this year starting off has been different, but I feel like I'm catching some vibes with like, I'm like, all right, we're on the same page here. David, we're getting to that point where we can throw some things out here. We can have some fun, have some jokes, and the trust is like, hey, look, I want to see what you can do. Let's run with it. And we're meeting in those in-between times where we have some asynchronous learning where kids are off, and then maybe they come back and, you know, you're discussing things. And one of the things that I have found this year, and this is just maybe just sharing a personal success, is I stopped using messages and I started recording videos. And the reason I did that is because there's so much that can get lost sometimes when you send an email. And I know it's really easy to send one out to everybody. And for sure, there's certain things that go out like that. Hey, great week, blah, blah, blah. But there's nothing like, hey, Lisa, I just want to let you know Kelly is killing it right now. I want to get in touch with you later this week, but I just wanted to make sure you knew just how much I enjoy seeing her every day. And don't show her this video because then she'll think she's my favorite. You know what I'm saying? And then I hang up real quick. And I don't know what happens on the other side, but the story that I tell myself is that maybe that connection's being made on the other end. Mm-hmm. And my hope is that caregiver that's having to maybe look into Cami, the upload PDF thing, or is having to go into Canvas, or is having to go over here to Zoom to find a password, or God forbid, they're trying to look under the other child's bed for the cord to the computer, that they'll just have a little bit more grace for us, knowing that we care and that it hurts. Like we miss the kids. We really miss the kids, and just trying to be intentional in setting the tone. I think you talked about that earlier, David, was when kids come in, you want them to have needs to have a feel. Yeah. And when we're having these Micah, you mentioned porch visits. We didn't have that opportunity, so that's why I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna record myself and shoot a quick video, because then they can see me. It's like they're talking to me. And none of them have sent me a video message back, but all of them have, like sent a message like, oh my gosh, this really meant a lot. And it feels good to know that we're finding ways. And I imagine that next year, and we'll probably start seeing it here more as everybody goes back to school. Some people are going to create some amazing things that become staples of what we do. And I'm really excited to see what those things are. Some of you guys on this panel will probably be the ones doing it. And it's going to be exciting to see how much better the lives our kids have because of it, because they, whether they're digital natives or not, this is their world. And we didn't have Zoom calls until probably, I don't know, for me, maybe the last 8 years. And so, and my daughter is 6 and she is first grade Zooming, you know what I mean? Like, so it's interesting. It is very interesting, the world that we live in. And I'm excited that I get to be working alongside amazing people like you all. And I'm just so thankful that you guys were able to be here tonight. I want to say thank you again to everybody, David, Micah, Diane. I love you all. I wish you all the best school year. And I look forward to seeing and keeping up with you guys.
And I can't wait to see what those in our audience, as you create things or you come up with new ideas, take what we've had and we've just, thrown things out, spin it, make it your own, tag us in social media so we can see the magic carry on.
That is right. And so much of that,
please.
So much of that is what it is. I mean, take the idea, run with it, make it so much better, because we're just fleshing things out. And I seriously want, if I don't see someone with a walk-up song and some fog music, I'm gonna be a little sad, you know what I mean? Because we do have and I was gonna tell you this, David, I told Diane the other day, I was ornery and I went on the App Store and I downloaded a podcaster like hot button thing, and I was able to grab some clips from YouTube and then like play famous lines and bites and things like that and songs. And so now when my kids do something, I'm able to like hit it and just play it. And we just kind of have it as like a theme song for like when kids do, all I do is win, no matter what. So when a kid gets a math problem, I'm like, I am trying to find these little buttons and boom, celebrate you. I want you to know that it's because, in the classroom, there's that feeling. And sometimes the virtual, I don't want to be any fall off. So anyhow, yes, I see Daryl's talking about some fog and smoke. Smoke, that must be you. You must be destined for that walk-up song because it's in your name. I'm just saying.
Always have friends on the stage.
That's right. Well, thank you guys so much again. And like I said, best of school year. And of course, if I can be a resource, please let me know. I'd love to help.
Anytime. Reach out, friends. Have a great
year.